Welcome to the podcast about venture capital, where investors and founders alike can learn how VCs make decisions and reach conviction. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome back for another edition of Investor Stories. On this special segment, the experts describe the most important lesson that they've learned and how that has changed the way they invest. This is the special segment called Lessons Learned. On today's special segment, we have Nicole Quinn of Lightspeed. Nicole, can you tell us a story highlighting a critical lesson that has changed the way you invest?
Meeting Jeremy Lowe was a critical lesson in changing how I invested. I like to say that working with Jeremy is like going to the gym. You know, it breaks down your muscles and it builds them up so much stronger. And so, you know, he taught me that angel investing is not venture capital investing. And he really showed me how to like deeply diligence a business and the fact that there's many doable deals. But, you know, it's really, you know, that 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 company that's interesting. And you think about like the way we invest, I mean, 10 companies a day, 50 a week, that's 2,500 a year. We invest in about 2. So we literally invest in 1 in 1,000 companies that we meet. And so having that judgment, being able to do that diligence, those were really the lessons that Jeremy taught me.
On today's special segment, we have Niko Bonatsos of General Catalyst. Niko, can you tell us a story highlighting a critical lesson that has changed the way you invest?
So doing references. So doing references, when you talk to people, they give you nuanced feedback that you can interpret it in many different ways. And if you tend to be an optimist that I am, sometimes, you know, you get to take the high road most often than not. So I've learned to write down what I'm hearing from people when I do a reference call, and that when they give, you know, nuanced feedback about somebody's leadership abilities and most importantly, ethics, I tend to be less so on the very optimistic side, you know, that everything is going to be rosy and much better now than before. I think when I was a younger person, I was willing, you know, to perhaps take some take some shortcuts, you know, when I was doing the reference calls. But now, you know, I feel like I'm older. Life is too short. I don't want to deal with people, you know, who have demonstrated before they're bad apples.
On today's special segment, we have Nikki Pezeshki of Felicis. Nikki, can you highlight a critical lesson that has changed the way you invest?
Well, for sure, relative to when I used to work at Vista and Summit, I've become a little more valuation insensitive. And so that has, you know, and I've kind of needed to, or else I would have done 0 deals over the last 4 years. But, you know, in general, I'd say that really trying to look for inflection points has been a very big part of the way that I've tried to invest over the last 4 years. And we really learned that from our experience with investing in Guild Education. We led the Series C for Guild Education. At the time, revenue was still in like kind of the low to mid single digits. And they were on the verge of signing a few really, really large contracts that were going to change the trajectory of the business. And, you know, we got comfort that those contracts were going to come through. And so we paid a really high price for the business based on the revenue that it had that day. But if you took it even 6 months, a year out, it was clear that kind of like, you know, if what happened with the contracts was going to happen, like we were actually going to be getting a pretty good deal. And so, you know, I think that's one of the things that has really helped me, especially in ventures. You got to look for the inflection points. You got to look for the supply demand imbalances. And if you feel like a company is like kind of like at the beginning of that inflection point and taking off, like that's the right time to invest.
On today's special segment, we have Shawn Carolan of Menlo Ventures. Shawn, can you tell us a story highlighting a critical lesson that has changed the way you invest?
The most critical lesson I learned as a startup founder in this context. I mean, many critical lessons, I think, how to be a better husband and father are the most important, but probably out of scope for this podcast. But in terms of startup strategy, I would say when you are a founder, if you're going to say, I'm going to commit my life to this, and especially when you start recruiting other people, I think that you should quit whatever you're doing, come join me. You have to paint this big, exciting picture, right? Here's our mission, and it's going to be great, and we're going to do this and that, and the world's going to change. So that's kind of very high level. But, you got a limited budget. And so it's like getting, I think, very super clear on, what is the smallest, I always challenge founders, what is the absolute positive smallest thing that you can build that delivers a product which one retains. So somebody finds it useful for something. And if that behavior pattern is reoccurring in their life, what do you know? They'll use it again. When my toilet gets clogged, there's this thing called a plunger. And what do you know? Every time the toilet gets clogged, I go and grab the plunger. Like it gets the job done. If it doesn't, then I call a plumber. But so you kind of think of like, what's the smallest thing I can do to get that job done for somebody? And then two, it has to be able to grow. And if you have retention and you have growth, the capital markets will show up and give you money, right? If you don't have either one of those things, I've got this product that's just like, 100 people love, but I can't grow. Capital markets are not interested. And if you have something that's growing like crazy, but doesn't retain people, we call that a fad. That also is not great for the capital markets because the fads go crazy for a short amount of time and then they're gone. So I always say, like, I have this internal framework I call the jobs tree, but you kind of start with your mission statement and you blow it out into a big branching tree of all of the constituent jobs to be done and keep, refining that tree smaller and smaller until you get to the leaf nodes. And the leaf nodes are like these little tiny, almost you could imagine, I took a picture of the person at some point during their day. And in that photograph, here's what they did with day 0 and day 1, they own my product. And now that picture's different, right? And so you say, there's that one moment. Just if you get that one moment working and you can go do that for, 100,000, 1 million people, then you can start to build the rest of that tree out towards your mission statement. So that focus, getting the wedge and getting the focus.
Love it.
To get started.
Love it. Yeah. I learned sort of my roots of product management were in something called desired outcomes, and it very, very similar parallels and jobs to be done with what you just described.
And it's so easy to be slightly vague, as you know. Yes. And when you're vague, oh man, all sorts of crazy things can be done as you're trying to interpret other people's needs.
Right. That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Also, if you'd like updates on new content from TFR, as well as the top 10 VC articles every week, go to fullratchet.net and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.